Today I'm making some sauerkraut. I'm going to use a red cabbage to make my sauerkraut with, fermented cabbage. I've got a couple of small heads from the garden the other day and my big cabbage head. This has already had its big fluffy leaves stripped from the outside, so this is my nice cabbage heart. Making sauerkraut is a really simple process. Lots of chopping and squidging and packing into jars. For every pound of cabbage, shredded and sliced, I'm going to need 10 grams of salt. So we're mixing our pounds and grams, which can make it a bit confusing. Ideally, we'd want a fine, powdery salt, standard table salt, sprinkly salt. I've only got a little bit, not sure how much is left in this jar. So I'm going to supplement by topping up with crystal sea salt, a coarse sea salt, which will be absolutely fine because the cabbage will create a lot of moisture and it will dissolve that salt anyway. Right, let's get started and chop up this cabbage. I'm going to chop its stalk off, we don't need that. And I'm sure you know how to manage to cut up a cabbage. I'm going to cut it in half. Oh, I'm going to try and cut it in half. Sharpen my knife. Push. Nothing worse in the kitchen than a blunt knife. It's the most dangerous thing you could have. There we go. Oh, wonderful. Then I'm going to cut out this centre core because we don't want this big chunky bit. Whether you're using a red cabbage or a green cabbage, it will be the same. Just it shows up really well with this purple red cabbage. So having sliced your cabbage in half, I'm going to cut this in half again. We want all the cabbage leaves, not that solid core bit. So having cut it in half, which as you saw was a big struggle, partly because it's rolling around, it's round, it's difficult cutting around things. So we'll expose that core and then we can access it much easier and slice that away. And we don't need this bit, we can put that out of the way. And the same on the other side of the cabbage, it's got a funny shape to it, a bit more awkward to get at. And we'll slice out that firm core. There, another chunk of core. Having cut the core out, we're going to shred up our cabbage into very fine slicey shreds. Keep your fingers out of the way, you don't want to slice them with your knife. If you have a food processor, you might want to put this in there and it'll shred it up for you. Or one of those mandolin slicing cheese gratery type boards. That would also work very nicely to shred up your cabbage. Nice even slices. I'm perfectly happy with my big sharp kitchen knife. I much prefer it. It does so many jobs. So I like working with a knife rather than all these slicey choppy gadgets. It's just more stuff to wash and clean. So, slice up all our cabbage and I'm going to put it into a big bowl. We want a big bowl, you'll be surprised how much cabbage you end up with, even just from one standard cabbage head. And you don't have to be growing your own cabbage to do this. Go to the supermarkets and buy a cabbage and make your own sauerkraut with it. Right, I'll see you back in a moment when I'm all sliced and chopped. Hello and welcome back. As you see, I've chopped up my cabbage. I haven't chopped up all my cabbage. I still have a small head of cabbage left. So I'm going to, as I have no room in my bowl, I'm going to keep this one and make it into coleslaw. Same process, slice it all up. Instead of covering it in salt, we're going to cover it in mayonnaise. I can use this in the next few days. I'm going to have to wait a few weeks before I can eat my, well, at least 2 weeks before I can be munching into my sauerkraut. Now, as I'm overflowing my bowl, I can't possibly mix it here. I've weighed my cabbage. I have 3 pounds of cabbage sliced and shredded. I've weighed out my salt. I have 30 grams of salt, which looks less than I was expecting, I have to admit. Even though I've done this before, it's been a little while. So I've still got a little bit of my powdered salt left. I'm going to split this. I've got myself a second bowl and I'm going to split this into 2 bits to start me off. So here's my other bowl. I'm going to take some of my excess out, pile it in here because I have too much to work with. When we start adding the salt and massaging our cabbage around, which is what we're going to do, this volume of cabbage will actually shrink down, and then I'll be able to add some more. I don't know if I want a bit. I'm going to take another little bit out. There we go. So we're probably about half and half now. Once this starts shrinking down, I will start adding in more cabbage. So let's see how it goes. Move my clutter out of the way. There. So with our 30 grams of salt into our 3 pound of shredded cabbage. It doesn't matter if it's red cabbage, that's what I'm using. Green cabbage, it's exactly the same. So I'm going to sprinkle on slightly more than half of my salt, and we're going to get in there and start mixing it around and squishing it in a bit like you might do with a bread dough. We're going to be quite firm and rough with this, and squishing it and massaging it to really work that salt into our cabbage. I'm going to put some salt into the cabbage in the other bowl. So bring that one forward. Put them there. And put the rest of our salt on this half of the cabbage. Ooh, I'll put a bit more of that in there. Less than what I thought. All of the salt, yay! And the same process for this half. Mix it all in. Now once we've mixed our salt in, it's well distributed amongst our cabbage shreds, I'm going to leave this sitting on the side for at least half an hour, and then we'll come back to it and do this massaging process again. Hopefully we'll find it all fits in one bowl at that point. We'll see. So there we go. Cabbage, shredded cabbage and salt. And we'll see you back in half an hour and see what it's looking like then. At the moment it's still quite dry and fluffy. It should be all wet and squidgy when we come back in 30 minutes. So we'll see you then. Ooh, my hands are going purple. That is a consequence I hadn't considered with the red cabbage. I have purple hands for the rest of the day. I'm going to take another look at our cabbage and see how it's getting on. Now I was aware that my hands were going purple. It's washed off quite well because I washed them when I'd finished with the cabbage. So we're fading nicely. I've gone and got my soap making gloves, or I've gone and got a pair of gloves out of my box of soap making equipment. I've not been using these for making soap. I have a pack of gloves because I'm using purple cabbage and I don't want to have purple hands for the rest of the week. Remember, we had to split it into 2 bowls of cabbage because I ended up with so much it wouldn't fit in my one big bowl. So we had 3 pound of cabbage and 30 grams of salt. And here it is. Doesn't look much different yet, but now we're going to start squeezing it and massaging in that salt some more. It's been sitting for a while. It should start to be losing a bit of liquid. So at this point, I'm using my fist. I'm really bashing it into this cabbage, pressurizing it to work some of that juice and liquid out. You'll be surprised how much fluid it starts to release. Am I getting any yet? Yes, I am. There we go. Squish my cabbage over that side of the bowl instead. So I said again, using my fist, and I'm pressurizing it into this cabbage and squidging it around the bowl, and it's releasing lots of liquid. That salt is sucking the moisture out of this cabbage. So I'm going to do the same with the other bowl for a second, which I've just added extra liquid to. And then we'll mix these 2 sets of cabbage together in one mix. Kind of pushing it down and then going to stir it about a bit, fluffing it up a bit like you would a pastry to get all that water, salty water and juices mixed around, and then I'm packing it in tight again to help it release some of that liquid. It's a bit like wringing out wet laundry. Squeezing it. Oh, it's working well now. All that juice flowing That's what we're looking for. I wonder if it'll all fit into one bowl now. Let's see. Pour it all together. The gloves are looking quite good. I thought they might start going purpley too. It's maybe not as bad staining as I thought it would be. Not an issue you have if you're using a white cabbage. No. Empty bowl. Now if you remember when I started and I'd first chopped up my cabbage, it was overflowing, we were bulging in this bowl. Now I can pack it all down, and because I'm a clear bowl you can see we're a couple of inches down off the surface, down off the bowl before we get to the cabbage. So I'm going to carry on massaging and squishing this, maybe just 5 minutes. I suppose I've done 5 minutes, and then we'll leave it again for another half an hour to carry on releasing all those wonderful cabbagey juices that it's going to be fermenting in for the next 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll see how it goes. Packing it in, yay. The gloves won't work if I get cabbage up my wrist. Get off. So I'm not wearing gloves because it's sanitary or because you need to. I've got some gloves on because I'm mixing a red or a purple cabbage, and I didn't want my hands going purple and running around looking like some sort of purple smurf for the... There. So it all fits in one bowl now. Wonderful. And we can pop that on the side, and again leave it for a while. Back in half an hour-ish. Well, here we are. It's been another while. Our cabbage has been sitting. I'm not sure exactly how long. It needs to be at least 30 minutes. This might have been an hour now because I've been busy doing other things. So I've got my gloves back on to keep my hands from going purple in my purple cabbage. As I think I've already mentioned, it's perfectly alright, your bare hands in your sauerkraut, mushing it around to this stage. I happen to be using purple cabbage and was getting purple fingers, so decided I was going to put some gloves on so I'm not running around with purple hands for the rest of the day. So this should be quite wet now and ready to go into jars. I've got myself some Kilner jars and I've rinsed these out with boiling water to sterilise them. I left them to cool because I don't want to put my cabbage into a hot jar, but I do want the jar to have been sterilised before I start putting in my cabbage. So we'll give this another pat and squish, release more of that liquid, and it should be getting quite wet now. Oh yes, it is lovely. So pack it in just like we did before, really tightly squishing it. You're wringing out your face flannel, wringing out the laundry. Not many people do wringing out laundry nowadays. It's all put in automatic machines. And squeezing out those juices. Lovely. So we want to get as much liquid. Use your muscles. Get them crushing the sauerkraut. Getting those liquids moving. So this wonderful mix of cabbage and salt. Oh, she says, sprinkling all over the worktops, is ready to go into our jars. I've got my fancy little jar funnel. It's not essential, just makes life a little bit easier, and I'm not sure I've got enough jars ready. If not, I'll have to go and get some more. So poke it in. I want something to push that down with. A wooden spoon, I think. That might do. Will that fit in the mouth of my jar? Ah, oh, perfect. So the thing with our sauerkraut is we want to be packing it down tight, jamming it in there really firmly, pushing out any air gaps and any space. We just want packed tight cabbage. Let's put some more in. So you can drop it in quite fluffy-ish, but once it's in that jar, we want to pack it in. can use your hands to push it in, but this wooden spoon's working really well. You will get the liquid rising up the jar. It should come just above your cabbage. We're going to top it off with a bit of the cabbage liquid out of the bowl, so that'll be fine. It's surprising how much you can pack into here. A bit more. And a bit more. So we do it in little layers like that. It's easier to get a good pack than if you're trying to put it all in one hit. Pushing it down nice and firm. I'm actually going to top off its level with some of the liquid that's in my bowl and pour some of that in. So all of our cabbage is fully submerged. What we don't want is any cabbagey bits showing up at the top of the jar. Want it completely submerged in that salty brine. And on goes our lid. Give these all a wipe in a minute, they'll be covered in salty water. There, that's my first jar of sauerkraut. Now this is going to sit on the shelf 2 weeks. I'm going to look at it every day. I've not got an air release lock on my jars, so this isn't super tight. I'm not doing it up like you would a jam. I'll just screw the lid through. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. It will start creating bubbles and gases, so you need to burp your jar, which basically means each day loosen your lid, even this little vacuum sealy bit, make sure any of the gases that it's producing can get out, and then just screw it down again. And we'll do that every day, and keeping an eye on it and see what's happening. I would advise put your jars in a roasting tin or a tray or even a bowl or tub, something that if it does ferment and bubble too much and overflows, you're going to catch any overflow liquid. It happens occasionally. You don't want it, especially with purple cabbage, you don't want that liquid staining what it's sitting on. Right, I'll pack up the rest of these jars and I'll show you how I'm setting them up, sat in a tray, to just hang around in the kitchen being looked at every day. See you in a moment. Here we are, my jar packing packed. I've got 2 full jars and a 2/3 of a jar here. So I'm just going to top off this not quite full jar with the rest of the salty brine still in our bowl, because you want everything as full as you can and definitely everything submerged in that salty water. So that'll work just as well, even though it's not totally full to the top. We'll probably eat that one first because it's part full. And just the same as our other 2 jars. So loosely screw the lids on. I said I'd show you when I've set them in a tray. So I'm going to use my roasting tin because my small cake pan, I've only got 3 jars and they're going to fit in here nicely. We can keep an eye on that. I say it'll sit in the kitchen and every day I'll take a look at them, just release the lids, let the air out, screw it up again for about 2 weeks, and then it'll be ready to pop in the fridge and eat whenever you have a desire for some wonderful homemade sauerkraut.